I'm going to say this at the very beginning because if you don't keep watching, and I'll understand if you can't, don't worry. I want you to know at least this. I believe we are facing one of our last collective opportunities as Americans to turn this nation around before our current crisis passes the point of no return. First, to introduce myself. You don't know me, and I don't know you. But what I hope we share is a love for the American name, for the country our founders fought for, and for the values we have forged as a nation. My hope is that we can set aside our left and right for a moment and simply talk to each other as a nation of people, not a nation of party lines. On September 10, 2025, Charlie James Kirk was assassinated on stage at Utah Valley University. This occurred just one day before the 24th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. Though separated by nearly a quarter century, these two events are not isolated. They are eruptions from the same half-century-old pot of water, left on the stove to boil and long forgotten. Let's rewind. For decades leading up to September 11, 2001, American foreign policy and military intervention in the Middle East left a staggering human toll. It's crucial to remember that for every casualty, there was a mother, a father, a son, a daughter, a brother, or a sister. For generations, American influence was a force of disruption and devastation for countless families in that region. It tore generational gaps, and in some cases, it erased entire family lines. It left behind a deep and justifiable anger. From their perspective, if our military was willing to kill their people, why should they not be willing to do the same to ours? I'm not here to argue the morality of their actions, but to state a fact. The descendants of those families, with holes torn through their lineage, would go on to attack the United States, seeking a form of reparation we would never willingly give. In the years before 2001, they tried repeatedly to launch a successful attack on American soil. Some attempts were thwarted. Others succeeded but lacked the intended impact. September 11th was the devastating success they had envisioned. It was an attack that was brutally effective in two ways. It distracted us politically at home, and it ensnared us militarily abroad. The United States plunged into a 20-year intervention to eliminate the threat, only to end it with a chaotic withdrawal that left the same enemy in power. For years, our nation's focus was hyperfixated on the foreign enemy. And all that time, for 24 years, we were blind to the real time bomb they had planted. Now, with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, we have reached the final countdown. You see, in the years we spent overseas, amidst the endless political discourse it fueled, a plague was spreading here at home. It entered our country on September 11th as a single, tiny thought. What if it happens again? That thought was the real weapon. That was the generational time bomb, a small reparation for the damages they believed we had caused. We changed everything. Air travel was permanently altered. National security efforts increased tenfold overnight. To this day, we still stop as a nation on September 11th to pay our respects. That day has echoed through every aspect of our lives. Our politics, our military, our culture. And that is the engine of the time bomb. With every new policy, every airport security line, and every overseas deployment, the psychological trauma experienced by those who remembered 9/11 was passed down to those who didn't. Deployments left children without mothers or fathers. Sometimes those parents never came home at all. This ambient, unchecked trauma became the fuel. 6 years after September 11th, a new war began, not overseas but in our own communities. We were too invested abroad and too divided at home to even notice. In 2007, the Virginia Tech shooting left 32 dead. The shooter was 17 when 9/11 happened. While his motives weren't directly tied to the attacks, the nation's fixation on the event meant that children who were 3 or 4 in 2001 were now 8 or 9, watching a new reality unfold where not even their schools were safe. All this while families were being torn apart by war and the 2008 financial crisis loomed on the horizon. 2 years later, in 2009, 3 mass shootings left 37 dead. They took place at an immigration center at Fort Hood and across 3 separate counties. 2 of the shooters would have been 17 and 21 on September 11th. That year, 2009, became the deadliest for mass shootings in American history up to that point. The list of unsafe places now included army bases, immigration centers, anywhere, really. Again, none of these events were orchestrated by foreign terrorists. But the plague I speak of isn't the shootings themselves. It is the cascading psychological trauma imprinted on the generations growing up in this chaos. The 2010s began quietly, but in 2012, 2 shootings left 40 dead and 72 injured. First, a movie theater. The shooter was 13 on September 11th. He grew up watching it all unfold. Then came the event that truly broke something in the American psyche. The Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. 20 children and 6 adults were murdered. The shooter was just 20 years old. He would have been 9 on September 11th. As someone who was in middle school then, I can tell you it left a permanent scar on students everywhere. Let's fast forward to one last, critical event. The Uvalde school shooting in 2022. 22 dead. The shooter was 18. He wasn't even alive on September 11th. He was born into the aftermath, into the world that trauma created. His attack was made worse by a chillingly incompetent police response, a symbol of institutional decay. This was the plague, now fully generational. I hope this disturbing timeline makes it clear. A trend has been escalating since 9/11, where those born into its shadow are both witnessing and committing increasingly horrific acts of violence. For decades, we focused on destroying an external enemy while ignoring the disease that was consuming us from within. And now, after Charlie Kirk was murdered on live television, the first reaction from our media and political leaders was to retreat to their partisan corners and spew talking points. The world is looking at us, asking how we can watch a man be executed and immediately start arguing politics. They are right to ask. They see the plague from the outside. We, as a nation, have become so desensitized to violence that it has become a self-perpetuating cycle. Every mass shooting is just another talking point for gun control or mental health debates. The victims, the children, the teachers, the concert-goers, are forgotten within a news cycle, casualties in a quiet civil war we refuse to name. That is the time bomb. The assassination of Charlie Kirk is the final, blaring alarm. This is our moment to recognize that this is not a political issue. It is not a gun issue. It is a cultural plague, a sickness of the soul that has infected our youth. The generational trauma ignited on September 11th, 2001, has been stoked by political division, fear, and our own refusal to see the real enemy. And if we do not stop it now, it will burn our nation to the ground. So what do? We turn off the voices that profit from our division. We reject the narrative that our neighbors are our enemies. We must look at the people next to us, in our communities, at our jobs, in our own families, and recognize that they are just as scared and lost as we are. The war for America's soul won't be won with new laws or different politicians. It will be won in living rooms and town halls, when we have the courage to stop shouting and start listening. This is the choice before us. We can continue to let the poison of the last 24 years consume us, letting this nation fracture into bitter, irreparable pieces. Or we can find the courage to face the sickness within together. The clock is ticking. The choice is ours.